between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. Viktor Frankl. Hey, I'm really glad you're here. Come sit with me for a while. I've been thinking a lot lately about what actually happens when you stop abandoning yourself. And honestly, I don't think it starts loudly. I think it starts quietly. You start noticing things. You notice how your body feels after certain conversations. You notice the role you automatically step into around certain people. You notice how often you say yes when something inside of you really means no. And for me, this journey honestly started years ago through self reflection. I became really interested in Stoicism a while ago, and one idea stayed with me deeply. You cannot change other people, you can only change yourself. And that sounds simple at first, but when you really sit with it, it changes the way you move through life. And honestly, part of this self reflection journey also came through my relationship with belief itself. I didn't really grow up in a deeply Christian household, although I had seasons of church growing up through friends in different parts of my life. But later, especially through my 20s and into my 30s, I became very involved in the Pentecostal Holiness Church. And honestly, I was sincere. I was trying to follow God. I was trying to be good, trying to understand what truth was. And while there were beautiful parts of that journey, there were also parts that became very fear based for me personally. And over time, I started realizing how much outside voices, ideas, and intense emotional environments were affecting my nervous system. And I think somewhere along the way, I started searching more deeply, not in a rebellious way, more in an honest way. I started asking myself, what do I actually believe? What feels true to me? What kind of life brings peace, clarity, and wholeness to me? And somewhere in that searching, I found myself exploring things like Stoicism, not because I had all the answers, but because I was trying to understand myself more honestly. And honestly, I still feel like I'm discovering. I still believe there's something beyond just ourselves, something meaningful, something sacred, something deeper than what we fully understand. But part of healing for me has been allowing myself to search without fear. And maybe part of coming back to ourselves gently, maybe that's part of it, is becoming honest enough to ask the deeper questions. And I spent so much of my life trying to emotionally manage everything around me, trying to keep the peace, trying to smooth things over, trying to make relationships work, trying to carry emotional weight that honestly was not mine to carry. And eventually I realized I could clearly see unhealthy patterns all around me. But I also had to become honest about the patterns within myself. And that part was uncomfortable because I started noticing places where I was participating in dynamics that no longer felt healthy to me. There were conversations I would walk away from feeling guilty after, not because someone forced me into them, but because deep down I knew I wasn't acting in alignment with who I wanted to become. And I think that realization changed something in me because I stopped only asking who hurt me and started asking, why do I keep participating in things that hurt me too? And honestly, I think a lot of it came from unmet needs inside myself, wanting connection, wanting comfort, wanting validation, wanting emotional closeness. And I think many of us stay inside familiar dynamics because some part of us is still searching for something, not because we're weak, not because we're evil, but because we're human. And once I started becoming more aware of myself, I also started becoming more aware of my nervous system. I noticed certain conversations left me anxious afterwards. I noticed how much fear I was consuming every day. The news, constant stress, heavy conversations, fear about the future. And honestly, my body felt overwhelmed all the time. And maybe you've experienced this too. Sometimes it's not even words. Sometimes it's just a sick feeling in the pit of your stomach, a heaviness, a tension, a feeling deep inside that keeps whispering, "This doesn't feel right anymore." And for most of my life, I ignored those feelings. I thought sensitivity meant weakness. But eventually, I realized something about myself. I feel deeply, I absorb deeply, and my nervous system was carrying far more than it could hold. Once I accepted that, I started protecting my peace differently. I stopped forcing myself to absorb every terrible thing happening in the world. I stopped believing I had to emotionally carry everyone around me. And honestly, that changed some of my relationships. There were times where I felt almost like the emotional container for everyone else, like unofficial confession hour. And I don't say that to shame anyone. I think many of us are simply trying to survive the best way we know how. But eventually, I realized I couldn't continue serving that role in the same way and continue healing at the same time. So I started setting small boundaries. Sometimes it sounded like, "I don't really want to talk about that today," or "I can't emotionally take that on right now." And honestly, some people understood, some people didn't. Some people just didn't even know. Because when you stop abandoning yourself, the relationships built around your self abandonment often begin to change too. That can feel lonely at first, but it can also feel peaceful. And I think one of the hardest parts of healing is realizing that not everyone will grow in the same direction as you. That doesn't make them bad, and it doesn't make them cruel. Sometimes it simply means your nervous system can no longer live inside dynamics. And for me, part of this realization also came from recognizing patterns I didn't want repeated. I realized if I didn't start creating healthier boundaries, certain emotional cycles would simply continue. And honestly, that realization changed me deeply because healing stopped becoming about blame. It became about responsibility. What can I change within myself? What patterns do I no longer want to carry? What kind of peace do I want to create moving forward? And I also want to say this. If you find yourself in a place where something deep inside of you keeps saying, "This doesn't feel healthy," please listen to yourself. Sometimes your body knows before your mind is ready to admit it. Talk to someone safe. Find a good therapist if you can. Journal. Spend time in nature. Sit quietly with yourself long enough to hear your own inner voice again. Because healing is possible. Slowly, gently, layer by layer. And honestly, I don't think healing is becoming someone completely new. I think sometimes it's finally allowing yourself to become who you were underneath all the survival. And maybe that's what happens when you stop abandoning yourself. You begin coming home to yourself again. I'm really glad you're here. Stick around. We're doing this together. Talk soon. Peace.